Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to what is an incredibly important event that we're hosting with B'Tselem. B'Tselem are the Israeli Information Center for Human Rights in the Occupied Territories, um, and we'll be discussing their excellent but sadly, predictably grim and devastating report into the systematic killings of Palestinian children and teenagers across the West Bank. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Joseph Willets, and I'm the head of parliamentary affairs at Caabu. And we're pleased to welcome Kareem Jubran, who's B'Tselem's field research director, and Ori Givati, who's B'Tselem's director of international relations. We've had the privilege of working with B'Tselem for numerous years, including on our parliamentary delegations to Palestine, and in terms of going out into the field to many of the communities which we'll be discussing today. The importance of Israeli civil society organizations shouldn't be underestimated, and we should all be doing what we can to support them. And I say this as well, that given that many Palestinian civil society organizations have come under sustained attack with devastating consequences, including through the designation of organizations as terrorists with various sanctions imposed upon them. One of those working in this space, dealing with the treatment of Palestinian children living under brutal occupation and apartheid, was Defence for Children International Palestine, which was forced to close and end its vital work earlier this year. Today in Parliament, as we speak, and I think this is important context, there is a debate on settlements and the banning of all trade with settlements, including goods and services. This really is bare minimum stuff that this government and previous should have done a long time ago. I mentioned our delegations, which countless politicians have been on. They've been to communities threatened by forced expulsion, dispossessions, and ethnic cleansing, facing the brutality of Israeli occupation forces and settlers. The violence in so many communities is off the charts, and Palestinians endure this kind of hell. This includes the systematic nature of the killings of Palestinian children and teenagers, which Ori and Kareem will be discussing shortly, and the frequent correlation between the proximity to settlements. As genocide has raged on in Gaza, the violence, ethnic cleansing, and systematic killings of Palestinians across the West Bank has too. The chasm, I think, between a lack of political action from this government and its predecessors and where the public are at is vast. So a final point, I think, before I hand over to our speakers is about some polling that we at Caabu did earlier this week, which was that 50% of the British public think Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. Only 17% think not. 48% think that settlement goods and services should be banned, and 55% of the British public do not see Israel as an ally, with only 15% of them seeing Israel as an ally. If you take these figures, all of these figures are much higher for those that have voted or did vote Labour, Lib Dem or Green at the last election. Our government and parliamentarians cannot say they do not know, and this includes about what we were discussing today, and this failure to act becomes more devastating day by day. With all that, thank you once again to Kareem and Ori and to B'Tselem and for all the work you do. So over to you both.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for attending for this meeting. My name is Kareem Jubran. I'm the field research of B'Tselem director. I joined the work in B'Tselem 22 years ago. And along these years, we document a lot of human rights violations, including killing of kids and adults in different places and different occasions. But all these killings, most of these killings was unlawful and it was unjustified. At the end of 2021, Israel changed the regulations of opening fire toward Palestinians, and it allowed the army to shoot to Palestinians, throwing stones, even when they escaped away. The army have the right to kill and to open fire to them, and even to kill them. Following this decision at the year 2022, the number at 2021, the number of the kids and the minors killed by the fire of the Israeli army, there was 16. At the year 2022, the number is raised to 34. That means that the number being doubled at 2022. But after the 7th of October, there were a great arising in the violence, total violence against all the Palestinians in the West Bank, of course, in Gaza at start, but also inside the West Bank. Following the number of the Palestinians being killed by the fire of the Israeli army and settlers, it became totally more than 1,086 Palestinians being killed since the 7th of October until the beginning of June this year. Out of them, 241 kids and adults being killed by the fire of the Israeli army and the Israeli settlers. The settlers killed 5, and the Israeli army killed 236. All these incidents, it wasn't justified, and big part of them was justified as terrorists, as the chief commander of the Israeli army in the West Bank. He mentioned that 96 of the Palestinians being killed inside the West Bank, they are terrorists. But according to our investigations, most of them, they are civilians. Most of them, they didn't participate in any protests against the Israeli army or against the Israeli civilians. In our report, we're focusing in the year 2025. In this year, we found out that 54 Palestinian kids and minors being killed by the fire of the Israeli army. We hold investigations over all these cases of killings, and we figured out that most of them, they didn't participate in any actions against the Israeli army, and those which they are participating, throw stones on different other issues, they didn't cause any danger for the life of the Israeli soldiers. That means that the killing, it became with license, with permission for the Israeli army. Just they can justify that they cause a danger for their lives, and they can kill without any accountability about that. It's not accidentally that since the 7th of October until this moment, there were no any charge about killing Palestinians by the army, either by the Jewish settlers inside the West Bank. Also, in our report and investigation, we found that more than 13 out of the 54 being killed by the Israeli army, the army prevent the medical teams to give a help and to give a hand for these injuries, and then they're bleeding until they passed away. They died. More than 18 bodies still hold inside Israel, and they didn't give these bodies back to their parents in order to parent as a human being. And that's a phenomenon. Israel hold tens of bodies of Palestinians inside Israel, and they didn't allow them to get buried in their towns and in their cities. About the amount of the killings, Israel, of course, this report is dealing with the West Bank, but if we look to the other side of the picture, inside Gaza, Israel killed since the 7th of October until this moment, more than 21,000 kids inside Gaza, with full impunity from the international community. And that's what allowed Israel to deal with so high violence inside the West Bank, although that in the West Bank the situation is very calm and very quiet. There is no huge demonstrations. There is no protests against the occupation and against the Israeli army, but still the violence, it became the main norm that Israel dealing with the Palestinians. And this following, it doesn't start after the 7th of October. Along the years of the occupation, Israel, this system allowed the Israeli society and allowed the Israeli army and allowed everybody inside Israel to accept that, because along the years there were incitement against the Palestinians, and there were dehumanization of the Palestinians. And it's not accidentally when they killed the 21,000 kids inside Gaza and more than 235 or 41 kids inside the West Bank. The Israeli community, it's normal for the Israeli community and most of the politicians inside Israel, they backed the army in these actions. From other side, and from my experience in the field and our field staff, we are documenting in daily basis settler violence against the Palestinians inside the West Bank, including shootings, including physical attacks against the Palestinians. And in the same time, when Israeli laws allowed the Israeli army to shoot Palestinian kids for throwing a single stone, we document tens, if not hundreds, of incidents of attacking Palestinian houses by stones and by fire flames in the presence of the Israeli army, without even preventing them or that's the Jewish settlers, and they didn't arrest them and they didn't prevent them from attacking the Palestinians. And we talk about 5 Palestinians being killed by the fire of the settlers in these 3 years, without any price paying for that, without any accountability. If we look to the cases of these kids, for example, I will give just a short examples. For example, Saddam Hussein, kid 10 years old from Tulkarem. His father and his relatives was sitting inside their house. He took the phone of his father and he go out of his house in order to make a phone call to his mother, which she visit somewhere. During that, Israeli patrol entered Tulkarem area and they start to shoot, and they shoot this boy in the entrance of his house, and he being killed. Another kid, 9 years old, Muhammad al-Hallaq, in near Hebron, near Al-Fawar refugee camp. He was close to more than 100 meters distance from the military jeep. He passing in the street of the village next to Al-Fawar camp. Few kids, they start to shout to the jeep and to just to shout from distance. The jeep, bulletproof jeep, the soldiers stopped the jeep, and one of the soldiers stepped out of the jeep and he pointed his weapon to Muhammad al-Hallaq and he killed him. Third example, Ayman al-Haymouni, 12 years old. He is from Hebron. He walked in the street with his younger brother, 10 years old. There were some kind of clashes, even not clashes. Kids throw stones to a military jeep. The soldiers step out and they start to shoot, and they shot Ayman al-Haymouni. His uncle, he ran in order to give him help, to support him, to take him to the hospital. The soldiers start to shoot to his uncle, and he escaped away. And they left Ayman until he bleeding and he died. So that's the situation which we deal with in daily basis. And we think here that the international community, by the full impunity given to Israel, it allowed Israel to adopt the Gaza model also inside the West Bank. And our concerns that the situation will be worse and worse and worse inside the West Bank without the involvement of the international community. In daily basis, there is a danger of killing Palestinians in the hand of the settlers, including Palestinian kids. The army also, even after we released our report 10 days ago, until this day, at least two Palestinian teenagers being killed in Sharait and in Kalandia next to Ramallah. And in the both cases, just kids throw a stone to military bulletproof jeeps, and that's enough to give the soldiers the permit to kill these young guys. That's very briefly, and I will give Ori the floor to continue, and then we will have, if you have any questions, we will be happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Kareem.
Thank you, Kareem, and thanks, Joe and Malaka and the rest of the team at Caabu for hosting this and collaborating with us throughout the years. My name is Ori Givati. I'm the Director of International Relations at B'Tselem. I manage all of our international work, and I'm also based in London. So I'm feeling everyone's heat that I see a lot of people under the heat. I'm under the same heat. I will just take us through some of the systematic elements that allow and enable what Kareem just described, this horrific reality. And then we're going to open it up for questions. Feel free to write your questions in the chat. And it can be about what we just spoke about or about anything else that you want to learn or ask us. The stories of people like kids like Muhammad al-Khalak, a kid walking to play football in his school and being shot in the middle of his own village are not a result of a rotten apple or an isolated incident. This is not what we're talking about. This systematic, widespread killing of Palestinian minors reflects a wider, broader policy of Israel that enables this and also allows it to continue with no accountability. Okay, as Kareem said, there is not a single indictment filed against soldiers for killing of Palestinians in the West Bank since October 2023. Not a single indictment that we know of. The reasons behind this, or there are a few elements to understand this. One of the major ones can be seen by the statements that were recently made by the commander of the Central Command, basically the commander of the West Bank, is called Avi Blut. And he was recently quoted as boasting, saying that we're killing Palestinians in the West Bank like we haven't killed since 1967. And this statement, this quote, directly confirms what we're saying here. It's not only that the system backs the shooters and gives accountability to the perpetrators of these killings, it also effectively gives them a license to kill. What is this statement? We're killing like we haven't killed since 1967, right? This boasting, this pride that Balut conveys is not only a quote of himself, he's also sending a message down, right? This kind of messaging by the commander of the West Bank trickles down, and we're seeing this in the actual results and the horrifying numbers that we speak about in our report from 25, about the year of 25, and also the numbers that Kareem described since October 23 of over nearly a quarter of the killings in the West Bank are of Palestinian minors. The change in the rules of engagement of Israel and the Israeli army is a major element here. If in the past, I'll say it differently, today the situation is that soldiers are allowed to shoot Palestinians who no longer pose a threat. Yeah, what Karim described about shooting of stone throwers. Yeah. This level of permissive rules of engagement is unprecedented almost in international law. Yeah, it goes against all basic principles, and creates a situation that basically, again, connects us back to the statement of Blut. There is an effective license to kill, right? These extremely permissive rules of engagement create a situation that we're seeing these numbers growing constantly. This brings me back to the question of accountability. We have to understand two things about this lack of accountability, or almost zero accountability. First, those killings are part of the policy itself, right? So the rules of engagements themselves allow the vast majority of these incidents are part of the policy itself. And this is why the system itself doesn't see it as something, as a kind of shooting that even needs to be investigated or that someone needs to be held accountable for. On top of that, those cases that are even outside the borders of this extremely permissive system or rules of engagement, even then we're seeing no true investigation. Even if an investigation is open, it usually just fades away after a couple of years. And as we said, not even a single indictment filed since October 2023 for killings in the West Bank. When we are looking, again, as Kareem mentioned for a minute, on Gaza, over 21,000 kids that have been killed as part of Israel's genocide in Gaza, we're seeing the exact same policies, right? In different magnitudes and scales, but the same policies that lead to the same results. One of the elements that allows this, one of the major elements that allows this is the fact that since October 2023, we have seen zero real action by the international community that allowed this zero action allowed Israel to commit and continue to commit a genocide up until this moment. Yeah, I want to remind all of us, since October 2025, since November 25, when the ceasefire was declared in Gaza, the so-called ceasefire, we have seen more than 1,000 Palestinians killed by Israel in Gaza. Yeah, the genocide didn't stop with the ceasefire. It's ongoing as we speak. And the international community's lack of any true action is a major element here. When Israel sees that it can use this kind of mass killing on a mass scale with zero consequences for itself, and here we're getting to the accountability on the even broader level, right? How Israel itself is not held accountable for its action by the only power that can actually do that, which is the international community. We are unfortunately not surprised that the same overarching broad policy of killings on a mass scale is also translated to very horrifying results in those killings in the West Bank. To finalize, I would just say that the situation today in the West Bank is one that Palestinians are facing an almost constant threat. If in the past, and maybe Kareem can expand in the question, but if in the past there would still, again, the situation wasn't good, yeah, I'm not saying that, but there would still be some places of perceived safety, okay? Even that is not the situation anymore in the West Bank. Only a month and a bit ago, Sam Abu Haikal, 7-month-old baby killed by soldiers in the middle of the city of Hebron, driving with his family for no perceived reason. They have been shot with no reason. We also published the documentation of this. This is the reality that is present today in the West Bank. This is the reality that is the day-to-day of the West Bank. And we are doing, just to conclude, we're doing this webinar here with you because we firmly believe that the international community, and with that, the international public, like each and every person in this room, have the obligation to take action. And we'll be happy to explore more and also provide more information or anything else that we can help with that you can help make this happen. So I think we'll just end here and let's open it up for questions.
Thank you very much, Ori, and thank you, Kareem. Kareem, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, just to above the small thing about the situation in the West Bank these days, and the impact of that over the population of the West Bank, the restrictions of movement in the West Bank in the last 3 years, it was a disaster for any Palestinian inside the West Bank. In order to move from one village to other village, in some cases, instead of 5 minutes or 10 minutes, it takes you 2 hours. And just about the childhood and the impact of that over the kids, just a few days ago, 4 months baby from Deir Ammar village in next to Ramallah, he had some sickness and complications, and he had to be taken to the hospital in Ramallah. The entrance of Deir Ammar is closed since almost the beginning of this year completely. And in order to go to behind this gate to the main road, you have to make a circle of about 15 up to 20 kilometers in dusty road, in black road, in order to reach this point from the other side. The father holds the baby to the gate in order to meet an ambulance in the other side of the gate in order to take the baby to the hospital. There were soldiers there. They prevent the father to pass the gate walking. And as a result of that, the baby he passed away. That's the reality these days in the West Bank. Each Palestinian in the morning when he left his house, before that he have to seek for the open roads, closed gates, checkpoints, and every mother, when her kids go out of their house in the morning to the work or to the schools or to university, she pray all the day in order to return back, because it's very dangerous to move. It's very dangerous to hold a normal life inside the West Bank. From one side, the soldiers, from the other side, the violence of the settlers, which is in daily basis everywhere inside the West Bank. Thank you.
Thank you, Kareem. There's quite a lot of questions. I'm being fed them by my colleagues, so apologies if I don't catch them all. But I think just also from me actually that if you, Ori, were in front of and Kareem actually in terms of actually speaking on behalf of the communities that you work with and the families that you speak to, and obviously there was the Guardian piece written by one of the mothers of I think it was Mohammed's mother, who was killed, which is I think we shared in the invite, but obviously if we can put it in the chat shortly as well. But if you and say Mohammed's mother and whatever were in front of Yvette Cooper, Keir Starmer, Andy Burnham, whoever, what would you be saying to them in terms of what the country like the UK should be doing in terms of based on this report and whatever? What would you say explicitly to them in terms of what the UK should be doing or needs to be doing?
Kareem, you want to start? I will start with him.
Just to understand the question 100%.
מה היית אומר שר החוץ הבריטי?
I think that it's to the British Foreign Minister and to all the international community. They can't claim that they didn't see and they didn't hear about the tragedy of Muhammad and 21,000 kids in Gaza and other hundreds in the West Bank. The daily life of the miserable life which Israel enforced over the Palestinians, the daily attacks of the settlers, and the ethnic cleansing inside the West Bank, and the burns of fields and preventing the farmers from reaching their lands. I don't think that these actions can be continued if the international community have a serious position and take actions in order to punish the human rights violators and the violators of the international law. It's a kind of ethical, not only law, the human rights law, and not only the issue of the law. Here, it's an ethical question of everybody from the international community. It should take a place and took actions against these actions from the Israeli side without intervention of the international community. And Britannia is one of the major players in the region. If they didn't take actions, I think that the responsibility is not only over Israel. Everybody in the international community have the responsibility to stop these crimes, to stop the genocide, to stop the injustice which is happening in daily basis inside the West Bank and inside Gaza, which the genocide is continue, and the starving of the people continue, and the miserable conditions of life continue in Gaza without doing anything from the international community. That's why we ask everybody, not only Britannia, but everybody have to take actions in order to stop that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will add maybe a few points here. Thank you so much, Kareem. First of all, I think it needs to be said, very clearly. We are not in a situation where the Israeli society will rise up and stop this. It's very unfortunate. It's something that we are always, we will always keep trying to work with. And all of our work is also in Hebrew and in trying to engage the society, but the society is not in a place, it's very, very far away from a place that it's going to take action, okay? Understanding that is key, because that leaves us with the international community as the only significant power that can actually, with relevant action, make change. The second thing that I would say is that we have to stop seeing Israel as something that it is not, right? Israel at the moment is being given the benefit, the credibility, being a Western democracy, by the international community, with some flaws, right? There is some policy elements that Israel needs to improve. This is not the situation. We're talking about a government that is currently and has been committing genocide. That genocide became a legitimate tool for, in its own eyes, to use against Palestinians. Talking about the government that is enforcing, conducting and deepening ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. We're talking about a government that is torturing Palestinians in its detention centers. About 9,000, between 9 to 10,000 Palestinians are currently held in Israeli detention centers in what we have published 2 reports about, become a network of torture camps. Yeah. And this government that is doing all of this is still given the legitimacy and credibility of the international community like a legitimate partner that we can work with in a normal way. And this is something that must end, because until this shift will not happen, it will be very hard to see any real results. So this is something I would really emphasize if I had this opportunity to speak to the new Prime Minister in Birmingham. or its new foreign minister. Another element here I want to throw in the mix is that allowing genocide is not only an issue of Israelis and Palestinians, the Israeli government and what it's doing to Palestinians. Allowing a government to conduct genocide with no repercussions has international repercussions, right? What are we showing to the rest of the world? Yeah. So so many things to say about this, but let's give some room for more questions as well.
Yeah. No, thank you. No, I agree with all of that and things that we've been trying to say for decades, but it still doesn't seem to be getting through. But there's quite a few questions actually in terms of operations. So there's sort of a question we have in terms of why do the Israelis use live if you switch off
Sorry?
I think that
Joe, you're cut off for some reason.
Yeah, okay, I'm back now. No, so questions on in terms of why do the Israelis use live ammunition and not rubber bullets, for example? And do we know of any IDF soldiers refusing to target children and or coming out and discussing this afterwards? And also, I suppose then also does another question here. I'm putting a few in at the same time, but does the Israeli army provide any justification for the shootings that have taken place? And then there's also another question actually, which kind of relates to that, which is, have Israel's government said anything in response to this? I'm assuming that they mean the report, or generally, or is this just the usual claims that Israel is being attacked for no reason? So I think a couple of their questions there about operations. I mean, I think a lot of the questions you've actually answered some of them in part, but I think this gives a sense of what people are asking.
So I will start here about why they use the live animation and not rubber or something like that. I think that very simply, because the life of the Palestinians for the system is just a dust. There is no value for the life of the Palestinians. In the same time, when the settlers attacking a Palestinian village and trying to burn Palestinian houses and broke houses and burn properties and damage properties of Palestinians under the eyes of the Israeli army, when the Palestinians start to protect themselves and to push back and in order to kick the settlers out of their village, the army start to use the live animation against Palestinians, and they kill Palestinians. And many of the Palestinians, even the kids which they being killed, they're being killed in such as situation. About the justification, it's simply just to say that they are putting the life of the soldiers in danger, or they are terrorists. And that's what Avi Ballout says. 96 of those which being killed inside the West Bank, they are terrorists. He considered Layla, which is 2 years old, as a terrorist. He considered Muhammad al-Hallaq as a terrorist. He considered Saddam as a terrorist. He considered Ayman al-Haymouni as a terrorist. But here, the real terrorist is this state which allowed the killing of the kids and even the adults without any accountability, without any responsibility. And we have tens, if not hundreds of cases of killings without any accountability, without any price paying for that. About the refusing, I think Ori will have more accurate answer about that, not me.
Thank you, Kareem. Yeah, I'll just add here. Look, if you want to look into what soldiers do after and what soldiers say about this issue, there is a very specific organization that works on that. It's called Breaking the Silence. I used to be the advocacy director of the organization for many years. So I recommend, if people are interested to see that side of this phenomenon, to go and read the testimonies. But I would say the people who give testimonies are extremely limited. Yeah, and there is no culture of either, first of all, internal accountability or discussion about these killings. It's not something that is being encouraged. There isn't any true, investigation even internally. We barely see soldiers that come after this and give any reason to believe that there is a system that, or there is even a way to kind of reflect on these killings. I have to say that this is directly tied also to the first question, right? Why are we not seeing rubber bullets? Why are we seeing just live fire? The situation today in Israeli society, we're talking about almost 80 years of apartheid. Yeah, something that we've been exploring a lot in our work, and I encourage everyone to go and look into our work around apartheid and how Israel's regime is committing apartheid against Palestinians. We're talking about 3 years of genocide. We're talking about a society that completely dehumanized Palestinians to the level that those killings don't even make headlines when you talk about Israeli media. Yeah, we talk about the discourse within Israel. Yeah. So when this is the situation, of course, it has an effect also on the situation on the ground. But again, if you're interested in looking into soldiers' perspective, I recommend you to go to see what Breaking the Silence published on this issue.
Thank you very much. And then actually there's a question here in terms of, when you've touched on it briefly, which is, I'm going to bring in a couple of, what is the attitude of the Israeli public to these killings? And also a question from Fran, which was that you mentioned that Israeli society isn't ready right now to fight against this genocidal regime. From your perspective, is there any hope of some kind of social and political uprising from within Israel to oppose this kind of regime in the future? So I guess that's what hopes do you have for Israeli society when it comes to this? And actually, I'm gonna just tie in another question with that as well, actually, which is about B'Tselem itself, which was another question: was what pressures did B'Tselem face, and do you think the Israeli government could stop B'Tselem from operating? I think those two are interlinked in terms of actually Israeli civil society, how, where is Israeli society at, and also, is there a future in terms of movements potentially within Israel to change the wind of direction?
Okay. Very complicated question. We can do a whole seminar about this analysis of how Israeli society is allowing these crimes to be committed on a daily basis with almost no discussion. I will mention a few things. First, I briefly mentioned earlier, we're talking about a society that has been living as the ruling part, as the ruling section of the apartheid framework, right? The way that Israel has been ruling the territories between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. When you live for 80 years as the ruling party, the party that is considered superior by the regime, this trickles down to everything. Yeah, we're not talking about 1 year. We're talking about 80, almost 80 years of this. The levels of dehumanization towards the Palestinians, which under this regime are considered as the inferior party, are truly hard to describe. And you look at Israeli media, for example, you see the discourse, and I'm not talking about the Netanyahu channels, okay, in channel 14 and 15. I'm talking about the mainstream channels, 11, 12, 13, which are considered mainstream, considered within Israeli society, just to understand the gravity of the situation. Channels 11, 12, and 13 are considered opposition, okay, to Netanyahu. And they are in many levels, but not on the level of this core issue of Israel's rule and apartheid against Palestinians. So when you see the discourse in these channels, you see civilized, I'm saying civilized like in quotes, discussions about whether all of Gaza are innocent or not, right? This is the kind of discussion that you can see in Israeli media today. And just one example, right? You can see Israeli media giving platform to people like Ben Gvir, Smotrich. People are promoting transfer of the Palestinian population, ethnic cleansing, and so forth. And these are not only, and this is the next element here, are not only just random people who are giving this platform. They are ministers in the Israeli government. Yeah, we're talking about the most ultra-nationalist, extreme right-wing Israeli government ever, that takes all of this that we spoke about in the last 50 minutes and puts it on a whole other scale of aggressiveness, the most vulgar expression of these policies. When we look at the opposition, or what is considered in Israel opposition to this government, we are not seeing true alternative that actually challenges this paradigm. Okay, the opposition today in Israel, talking about figures like Eisenkot, Bennett, Yair Lapid, even Yair Golan, unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of opposition to many types of policies of Netanyahu. Yeah, let's put it first and foremost, and even more, I would say, of course, we would prefer Netanyahu to be also toppled or not toppled, just replaced in the next election. Yeah, first and foremost, of course, we would prefer that. But when we talk about the policies against Palestinians, we don't see true differences. Real, substantial differences between the rest of the parties, even in the opposition. Of course, I'm talking about the Jewish Israeli mainstream opposition. I'm not including here the Palestinian parties that are a different story. Okay, I'm talking about the mainstream. I'm talking about Israeli society. So this is where it is today. We can talk about it for hours now about how we got there. But these are like just a few elements here. Whether this can change, I believe that very, very significant elements that are currently far, far, far away in the future, hard even to see them on the horizon, need to change before we can see the Israeli society changes in that direction. And this is why we're putting so much emphasis on the international community. And again, we are working in Hebrew. We are working with Israeli media as much as we can. We believe it's very important to reach out to the Israeli society. The numbers of resistance within Israeli society and people who support our work and other organizations' work is growing, yeah, but not nearly enough to what we actually need to bring it to actual, real, substantial change. International community action can push that, hopefully, and make the society understand that it must change. But again, very far into the future, and this is why this is one of the main reasons we're putting so much effort also in doing this kind of webinars with you.
And also, I don't think that we can have this change inside the Israeli society without a kind of pressure from outside or intervention from outside. Because the Israeli society, they see that they benefit from the impunity of the international community. They can continue to do what they're doing now without any paying any price for that. So they will continue to do that. That's why the role of the international community is very important. That's why we say that the international community, they hold a responsibility for these crimes in the ground by not stopping these crimes, including the genocide.
Yeah, no, agreed. Thank you both. There's a couple here actually. One was about the pressure actually on B'Tselem And do you think that the Israeli government could stop B'Tselem from operating? And then also linked to that is, I mentioned also Defense of Children International Palestine, they were shut down. People are asking why were they shut down? And has B'Tselem in any way filled the space left by them? I suppose that also applies to other Israeli society, civil society as well. And then I want to just link in as we're talking about sort of B'Tselem more specifically. It's like what value do Caabu and B'Tselem? I mean, I can answer a bit of this as well, but find can come from cross-party visits of members of parliament, obviously in the UK, but also elsewhere, I think, as well. Um, and how can we as constituents, so all of us basically effectively work with MPs, elected representatives who participate in such visits when they return. So I guess it's back to that kind of point of like, what small part or big part can we play as just people that care about these issues, in terms of actually helping our elected representatives once they come back and engage them further in these issues.
Yeah, I'll give a few points and I'll try to be quick because I'm also aware of the time. First of all, about the government. Look, yes, B'Tselem is under threat and different types of, not only B'Tselem, by the way, the entire Israeli human rights civil society by the Israeli government. It comes from legislation that's trying to limit our funding, trying to delegitimize our voice within the society, try to delegitimize and in different ways place hurdles on our operations and so forth. At the moment, we're still able to operate, okay, and we're operating as usual. And I think it's very important because when we talk about DCI Palestine, this is exactly an example of what Israel's government did to Palestinian organizations by declaring 6 of them a while back, a few years ago already, as terrorists in Israeli government eyes. And this created a chain of kind of consequences for many of those organizations. DCI, one of them, that for example, challenges with working with banks. This is a major one, yeah, getting donations and so forth. That is one of the main reasons that DCI had to close. We are not
sorry, Ori. Not only the DCI, Al-Haq, the Al-Mizan Center, the PCHR, all these organizations being closed now because of also not only the Israeli sanctions against them, but only the American sanctions because they take a files to ICC. And imagine to be punished for dealing with the international law and dealing with legal issues.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, completely. Yeah. All of those 6 are under significant hurdles, and definitely the US sanctions are adding to that. So, yes, the attack on civil society is very real. Israeli organizations are still able to operate. We're doing a lot in order to be able to continue to operate. But the risk to our operation, and when we talk about risk, we're mainly talking about our field researchers that are working daily in the West Bank, is growing. One of the things that Israel did lately is limit the access, the ability of access for international organizations to the West Bank and Gaza. And this is a significant element in the ability and capacity to actually report. You know, we are doing as much as we can. But when Israel limits all of these other organizations, international organizations, from reporting from the ground, this also places significant hurdles on the rest of the organization's work, right? There is more work and less people who can cover it. And so this is about the government, and we're doing as much as we can to be able to continue to operate and prepare for future hurdles and legislation that might increase. This also is heavily related on the elections in the way we see things. In terms of visits, I wanted to mention there was a good question about the visits. I have to tell you, I think that visits to the area and really seeing it with your own eyes, and Kareem is leading those visits. I used to lead visits like that when I lived there, but now I live in London. Is probably the best way to show how the gravity of the situation. One of the challenges is that, you know, no matter how many webinars like this we will do and how many reports we will publish, which and all of this is very important. There is nothing that can replace being there for yourself and seeing it with your own eyes. And I'm speaking also about myself. One of the things that shifted significantly, I was an Israeli. I wasn't always in this political place that I am now. One of the things that significantly really pushed me in this direction and made me understand what is actually going on is being attacked by settlers myself, is being on the ground with Palestinians that the entire olive grove was destroyed by the settlers, is being attacked by the military, as I was leading a tour that is similar to the delegations that Caabu is leading, or being stopped and so forth. So this kind of experience is irreplaceable. And this is why I think, and it also connects us to the question of what to do with your local elected officials. Push them and encourage them to do the visit. They will not return the same if they are reasonable people who believe in equality and human rights and democracy. This is a prerequisite. But as long as there are these kind of people, they will not return the same. And we need that. So highly encourage this kind of visits. And in any way you can help make them happen is a very important step forward. I have to say again that to the question about what can we do, what can you do as citizens in the UK, I live in Hackney. I see what happened here in the local elections. I was really shocked, amazed for in a good way, that one of the major discussion points in the local election in Hackney was about the genocide. It's surprising to me coming from Israel, and I think this is very important, because genocide is not only, again, what I said earlier, this should interest each and every one of us, including our elected officials. It has repercussions globally. It has repercussions on the moral values that we promote as people and what kind of things we support. And this is why, again, I would highly encourage this kind of discourse to, as much as possible, penetrate even the most local elections, because it's a moral issue that can affect also our local life here in the UK, and not only what is happening and there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just from my point of view as well, in terms of the delegations, I mean, they're very important. I mean, many of you will be aware that obviously there was a Caabu and Medical Aid for Palestinians delegation in April last year, which was denied entry at Ben Gurion in Tel Aviv, and then subsequently in September, another two MPs were denied entry. I think it fitted in with the politics at the time in terms of despite the fact that actually the British government was still treating Israel as an ally, the Israelis, I think, treated the British government with absolute contempt, and it was related to also the recognition of Palestine, both in September as well. So how they kind of handled that, and actually stuff that the MPs had said. There are still delegations going out. We've not done one for a while, but we're still planning and working that out. But actually, it felt that they'd finally caught up with the idea that actually the effectiveness of such visits, and that's why they started to stop them, because actually there is, as Ori has indicated, there's absolutely no substitute in terms of actually being out meeting communities, seeing exactly what is happening, and I think I think in terms of MPs would also visit the military courts, where they would see in terms of kangaroo trials for Palestinian miners and others, and actually seeing that, I think, was one of the most effective parts of advocacy, in the sense that actually you see how things operate. You meet families who have had loved ones, including their children, that have been shot by Israeli forces or settlers, as whatever, friends of ours that have also been targeted as well. So it really is important. I haven't been able to cover all of the questions. There was a lot of questions in the chat. I don't know whether both Kareem and Ori, you want to make some final remarks before I sort of wrap up, because I know we've sort of gone over the hour, and but obviously thank you both, and thank you everyone for being here. But do you have any final sort of remarks before we do wrap up?
Kareem?
يعني as B'Tselem's staff member and as a Palestinian living in this reality, I think that we need more support, more help from the international community, more pressure over the governments, because we can see the double standards is very clear in this international community. We need some kind of involvement. Without that, I don't think that the Palestinians can survive in this area. If every Palestinian live in this piece of land, he's under daily pressure. It doesn't matter where he live, if he live in Jerusalem or in Ramallah or in one of the villages. The ethnic cleansing is in very wide way, even in Area C, which is 60% of the all the land of the West Bank. It became almost empty from the Palestinians by the settler violence, which is backed by the state and by the Israeli army. And all these things happened in the ground. What allowed this to happen? The full impunity from international community. That's why we need your work, your active in order to pressure your governments in order to change the situation in your countries. Without changing your countries, we can't be changed here. The things will continue. The injustice will continue. The crimes will continue. And any symbolic step here or there, it's not enough. For example, to sanction few settlers here and there, I don't think that this is enough in order to stop these crimes. It's just to clean your those which they take these actions, to clean their conscience that we do something. No, you don't do enough in order to stop the crimes. You don't do enough in order to stop the genocide. And in some point, you are partners. You are part of this genocide. You are part of these crimes because you have the power to stop that and to pressure in order to stop that. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Kareem. I'll just say 1-2 words and we're gonna finish here. First of all, thank you for coming. And it's very important for us. Every webinar like this, in our view, is another little step towards change, and that's why we do them. Second, it's time to understand the system as what it really is. As I said earlier, there is one thing that is important to take away. Like, we have to choose like one major element here. Until we will not really truly understand the Israeli system as it is, a system that conducts genocide, ethnic cleansing, torture of Palestinians, and so forth, apartheid, we will not be able to make progress. So we highly encourage this kind of discourse. And the third thing is we are going to produce and publish very important findings and reports and videos in the coming months. So please follow and do what you can to share our work so we can work together to end this. We're always available through Caabu for any questions or further inquiries. Feel free.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Kareem. Thank you, Ori, and thank you everybody for joining us. Please do keep up to date with our work. We will be sending out a recording. I'll be probably emailing it over to everybody tomorrow, so you can rewatch it and send it to other colleagues and friends as well. And if you do feel so inclined, do sign up as a Caabu member, support our work, help us put on events like this, and also continue to support B'Tselem. They are a really valuable partner to so many of us, and the work that they do is absolutely vital. And if it wasn't for the likes of B'Tselem, we wouldn't be able to provide some really top-notch information to parliamentarians, to other lawmakers as well. So thank you for your contribution. Thank you for coming. Enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy the sun. So thank you again.